Hello, and welcome to another week of Let's Discuss with Meg Duke. I am flying solo this week because following my episode with Mano from a couple weeks ago, which if you have not listened, go ahead and finish this episode, but then go back and listen to that one. It's so good. Anyway, I'm not even going to tell you what it's about because it's amazing. You got to go listen to it for yourself and then shoot me a message and tell me what you thought about it. But during that conversation, I talked about the rational mind and the emotion mind and how that comes together to form the wise mind. And I've had some people ask for more information on that, some psychoeducation, if you will. So I don't have a guest this week, but tune in next week because I have an amazing guest that I've been waiting for. I've been wanting to hear this person's voice on my show basically since I decided to start a show. I was like, that person. Also very excited because I ask every person who comes on, how do we know each other? And recently, which is amazing, I've been reaching out into people's emails and DMs, which is great, but I'm not going to be like, how do you know me? And then be like, I don't know you. You randomly DM'd me and I'm showing up because I'm a nice person. So I don't get to really ask that question because I've had a lot of amazing guests that I don't really know all that well, but then form a great relationship with as a result of the podcast or have a really great conversation with. This time, it's going to be a really great answer. So really looking forward to that next week. But for this week, a little psychoeducation on the wise mind. So when we talk about the wise mind, we talk about it being a combination of the reasonable mind, the rational mind, the reason mind, which is your past experience, your research, your Googling, logic, statistics. Think of like, it's funny, the example I always use is kind of archaic because I don't think anybody does this anymore, but like the skills that you use to balance a checkbook, the skills that you use to follow a map, which in this case, again, like your directions on your GPS on your car, right? But even then, you still have to be able to understand what like 600 feet ahead, which sometimes I have to admit for me is a little questionable. I'm like, is that 600? Is this the next? Is it this one? No, I'm not sure. Anyway, building a Lego model, right? That's very methodical, like a puzzle, right? Things that you have to follow, procedure, being able to understand maths, statistics. We can use our reason mind more when we feel good, when we are in an emotionally, mellow or normal. I hate to use that word normal ever, but like just kind of euthymic is the word that I like to use, that a lot of clinicians use when you just kind of feel good. We're good. So that's your reason, your ration, your reasonable mind, right? And so the other side of that would be the emotional mind, right? So the feelings, the impulsivity, can be used to help us motivate us to solve problems, right? Or how we build relationships with others, how we build rapport with colleagues, or how we build emotional connection with friends, loved ones, romantic relationships, whatever that might be. When we're feeling more keyed up in certain ways, whatever emotion it might be, it's easier than to kind of ignore that rational mind, the reasonable mind. And so those are, again, we're talking about the feels, right? So anger, sadness, anxiety, rage, grief, anguish, these different emotions that we have. That's where sometimes we make choices and emotions, and we talk about the importance of not making permanent decisions off of temporary emotions. And sometimes we are not successful at that. Sometimes we say things that which we would not have said, we wish we could take back. But then they're already out of the bag. So what I talked about with Mano was how we kind of merge those two together, because we never want to make it. I shouldn't say never say never. We don't like to make decisions. Like if you're in a statistics class and you're taking an exam, you don't want to really bring your emotional mind too much into that. Like answer the question, follow the procedure. That's a reasonable mind moment. Yes. So I don't want to say we never want to only use one or the other. Another example that pops to my mind is that's a swing to the emotional side is if you're going through your childhood things or someone's things, right? And rationally speaking, we don't want to save a bunch of stuff that to other people might even be considered junk. But if you're going to reflect back on that and wish you had them or had the ability to look at them and had done something with them, that's an opportunity for you to use your emotional mind and making a choice there, right? So like rationally, I don't need these 17 paintings from my child when they were 2, but I also want to keep them. And then of course there are other ways that, you know, I actually take pictures of all of my kids' artwork and put them into books and have them printed. And then I physically throw away most of the actual art itself. But then I, as the crazy mother, have the opportunity to go back and look at that whenever I want, which I do sometimes, and it's cute. And I mean, it's funny because like my son's 2.5 now, so he's like starting to color more with a little more direction, with a little more intention versus just like slapping color, crayon, paint, whatever everywhere. But it's funny to see some of the stuff, and it's like very clearly my 4-month-old did not color that picture or did not paint that, but I still kept them and I have the picture, but I don't have a box of stuff everywhere, right? So like that I think is an example of using my wise mind of like, I don't physically need to keep them all. I don't want to be too emotionally clinging to that. And I also have the ability to look at all of that stuff because I've saved the photo of it. But if you're the kind of person who has the space and has the ability to keep it all, use your emotional mind. Do it. Say, nope, I'm keeping them all, hanging them up. That's how I'm decorating my house, plastered in children's art, whatever makes you happy, right? That my emotional mind example kind of turned into, I think, if I may, I think kind of a wise mind moment for me of like, how can I have both things? How can I not physically hold on to all of this actual physical material and also still contain the emotional piece? So there you go. You've got kind of 2 examples there. So I don't want to say we should never just use emotional or never just use the reasonable mind. I think the goal, though, is to make sure that we're making choices that take both into consideration, right? So we're trying to integrate the rational side and the emotional side together so that we are hoping to find the best outcomes in our choices. So everyone has a wise mind. Not everybody necessarily knows how to utilize the wise mind, right? It's being able to feel in control of your emotions, to harness them and utilize them for motivation, like I talked about, or being able to help that guide your choice, but also keeping in mind what is true, what is not, what is a feeling. Feelings are not fact. Feelings are not fact. Have I said before that feelings are not fact? They're not. So what is true? What is actually happening? Are we using any of those critical thinking errors? Are we trying to read someone's mind? Are we, right? No. So we're trying to make sure we're using the wise mind to try to find, I don't want to tell you to calm down. I don't tell people to calm down. It is one of my biggest pet peeves. Like if I'm upset, you telling me I shouldn't be upset, there's that word should, in no way helps me. And quite frankly, for me, it is a trigger. Like if you tell me to calm down, if you tell me I'm being irrational, if you tell me I shouldn't feel a certain way, I'm like, oh, well, now we're in hold it. I wasn't mad and now I am. And here's why I'm mad, because these are the 6 emotions that go into that secondary emotion of anger. How very dare you, sir? So the thing is that we want to make sure we don't confuse the wise mind with the emotion mind. They're both can be very powerful feelings, right? And we're feeling something powerful. We're recognizing what's going on. The wise mind is able to not feel that sense of stress, right? And I want to make sure I'm intentional about the words I use, because of course, I don't know if you've listened, I'm like sending people off to do other podcasts and shows, but I am reading Brene Brown's Atlas of the Heart. I'm sorry I talk about Brene Brown as much as I do. I'm not that sorry, but also I'm aware that I do it. Like, it's like, yeah, Meg, if we wanted to hear about Brene Brown, we would just go listen to her podcast. So fair enough. And also when I'm reading her Atlas of the Heart, and it's amazing because it's all of this research into actual PhD level research, the actual word research, not how we have co-opted the word research for Googling, like actual research into the different types of emotions, right? And so the words like stress and overwhelm, like overwhelm is being her example is like blown. Like the only cure for overwhelm is nothingness, right? Versus stress and anxiety where I'm feeling like I'm in the weeds, right? I'm treading water, but I'm not doing all that great. So I want to make sure that I'm being intentional even in these conversations about what language I'm using. So I don't want to say like The wise mind is just never feels any stress at all, but the wise mind is able to get to a space where they don't feel blown, overwhelmed, truly needing nothingness to be able to continue on. So that's good because it's got that logic balance to it. It's like, picture the scales, right? Where you've got, and it doesn't have to be perfectly even, but it's keeping it from tipping all the way over one way or the other, right? So when you've got some of the emotional mind, some of the wise mind, we're not fully tipping the scales up one way or the other. And so that wise mind has that logic balance to it, keeping in mind whatever your emotions are feeling, right? So wise mind is not persuaded just by emotion alone, ever. And that is where we want to be, right? We don't ever want to just be fully 100%, no conversation about anything. We want to make sure that we're keeping that in. So some of the skills that you would need, of course, is being able to observe your emotions. We talk about that a lot, like a conveyor belt. I talked about it with Dr. Hardy about experiencing emotions like a wave. I have a client who was reading a book and it talked about, like, just as you watch cars drive by, right? You watch the car, you see the car coming. Those of you who aren't on the podcast, I'm using my hands to describe it, but hopefully I'm using my words to describe it well enough for you. But you're looking out to the right and you're seeing a car drive by, and you continue to see the car drive by, and you continue to see the car drive, and then out the left it goes, and there it goes out of your sight. And so we talk about trying to do that, like with an emotion too, is that recognizing it, not having it, not grabbing onto it, not holding on to that. Feelings are not final, feelings are not fact, right? So it's going through, it's going past and recognizing. So being able to observe it, to not judge it, being intentional about not trying to judge the emotion. I shouldn't feel that way. I should be over this. Y'all have to stop. We gotta work on it, team. We gotta. We're trying to not control, and I know it's hard, power and control, y'all, power and control. Trying to not control the emotion. We're just trying to observe it, control your attention, but not what you see, right? So let it go through. Describing, putting it into words. And I think, again, I'm so sorry, but like, I don't know who else has taken, I forgot the number. Is it 63? I've got the book right here. I'm gonna look while I'm talking. I don't know who else has, for those of you on the YouTube here, here's the cover. Those of you who are on the podcast are like, Meg, we can't see you. Duh, not a visual medium. So she has found, oh my gosh, I don't know. It's not going to be an easy, so it doesn't matter how many, 63, 72, I don't know. But she went through and actually described and defined all of the emotions. And so it's helpful, right? It's helpful to know the difference between like stress, anxiety, and overwhelm. Because when we say I'm overwhelmed, then we're telling our brains that we are shutting down. We're holding up that emotion. We're saying, like, we're holding up this belief of like, I'm blown, I can't do anything. The only cure for overwhelm is nothingness, so I can't do anything else. And it's like, wow, just when you thought like that's the worst that could be, then things continue to get worse because you continue to tell yourself how upset you are. So being able to make sure that we're really understanding like the difference between grief and anguish and sadness, right? And I think that that's very helpful, and we can have another conversation on that in future subsequent podcasts as well. But being able to recognize, like I think Brene did a poll and people were able to come up with happy, sad, and pissed off were the three emotions. Like, how many emotions are there? And just with open-ended question, how many emotions are there? And on average, it was those three. Like, there are more than three emotions, and yet here we are, and we only can come up with so many because we limit our language on them. So here, when we can describe appropriately how we're feeling, that's so important in the use of the wise mind. I'm recognizing that I'm feeling this way because of this, as evidenced by that, and then figuring out how we want to move forward with that, which I'm going to get to in a minute. Talk a little bit about cognitive restructuring in a moment, but that's what we're looking at. So identifying feelings. A thought is just a thought. A feeling is just a feeling. Automatic thoughts, automatic negative thoughts specifically. Remember that first word, automatic, means you don't have control over it. And I get that. Thoughts pop into our minds all the time. It's then our choice what we decide to do with it after that. I had this negative thought that just came into my brain. Can I sit here and dwell on it for 20 minutes? Is that productive? Or am I going to use my wise mind, recognize the emotion that I have it, describe it, recognize the is this true? Are there critical thinking errors here? Am I overgeneralizing it? Right? and then being able to take a choice and move forward. Because I can tell you there are times where I've had something pop into my mind and I've chosen to sit and dwell on it and allow the physical symptoms of anxiety to come upon me. And then there are times where I'm like, you know what? I did the best I could with what I had, when I had it, and that's all I can do. And I will make better choices next time. And I will be more educated on whatever it is, what it might be. And I'm going to do better, but I'm not going to sit here and beat myself up, because that's not going to be productive. And then all I'm going to do is sit here and be in this negative space. So I'm not going to do that. And then participating in your experience, right? So what is it that you do? Let go of that room, like we call it rumination. We put the hamster on the wheel, right? So I was talking about, if you have an automatic negative thought and then you let it run for 20 minutes, is that helpful? Are you going to ruminate on that thing over and over again, right? No. Instead, it's becoming one with your experience, forgetting yourself as you are in the experience and participating in it. Enter into the experience. Practice these skills as you're feeling it. We talk about basically with any new technique, the best time to practice them is not when you're having the high highs or the low lows, because it's not likely that that's going to stick. Not to say that you can't try it. Certainly, if you get to a 10 and it gets you to a 9, you've still got progress. But if you were able to practice it more in a space and be able to utilize it to get you from a 10 to a 4 or 5, or, again, these numbers are I'm just throwing numbers out there. Any improvement is amazing. And also you're more likely with practice in a space where you do feel more at ease, more receptive to trying new things and changing. That's when you want to try to practice. So trying to use the wise mind, recognizing like, okay, is this coming from more of an emotional slant? Am I not being emotional? Do I need some more? Am I being too logical? Am I being too rational? Utilizing too much of the thinking, the logical? Am I being impulsive with my emotion? What does that balance look like? Again, I want to be really clear that the wise mind, it doesn't have to be 50-50. It doesn't have to be like on that scale. They don't have to be perfectly even. That's not what we're always looking for, because that's not realistic. And again, these are just arbitrary numbers anyway, but I don't want anybody to picture the scale and be like, I'm leaning a little bit more emotional. Like, okay, good. But you're recognizing that. And is that emotional concept, is that piece coming in and that's helping to guide your thoughts? Great. Then do that. Use that. That's perfectly okay. That really is. So I just want to make sure that we're not thinking like, oh, my scales are a little not 100% balanced, so I'm doing the wise mind wrong. Okay. So talking a little bit about cognitive restructuring, because I don't like to just give you all some ideas. I mean, we talked a little bit about, again, observation, description, participate, practice. So those are some skills to practice with the wise mind that I've already given you. And then I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about cognitive restructuring. If I get enough notes from people who really want to dig in deep and do a whole other segment on cognitive restructuring, I'm happy to do that, because I do love psychoeducation. And I used to work in group therapy with adults. I did it with adolescents. I've done it with elementary school age, both inpatient, outpatient. And I have thick binders, 3-inch binders filled with pages and pages and pages and pages of psychoeducation. And I kind of miss getting to actually like officially do it. I always lump it into conversations. Like I was having a conversation with Mano and I just started talking about the wise mind. Didn't pull the sheet out about the wise mind and was like, Mano, I'm going to talk about this today. It just came up naturally in conversation. And also I'm happy to have these conversations even more in depth. If there's anything that you all are thinking about, shoot me a DM and a message and say, I'd love if you would talk more about whatever your thoughts. So cognitive restructuring, we're talking about the situation, right? So what is the situation? You can write it down. You can think about it and write it down. People talk about how important it is to write things down, and physically too, but I'm also very aware that some of you are like, I haven't picked up a pen since high school, technology, blah, 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 whatever. So people talk about the importance of physically writing things down. I think there's something to that. I also think anything is better than nothing. So if you want to think about it, if you want to type it into your phone in the notes, if you want to type it into your laptop or on your iPad or your tablet, whatever makes you happy, but writing the situation down, what is it that's activating this strong negative emotion, right? Is it something that happened in the past that's coming up again? Is it something that's currently happening? Like right now I'm feeling this because this is happening. Are you having anticipatory anxiety about something in the future, or anticipatory grief, anticipatory loss, whatever the emotion is, past, present, future? Where is it? What is it? Why is it? Who is it? How is it there? Right? How is it a negative? What is causing the negative strong emotion? So then thinking to yourself, what are the thoughts about the situation? Again, I talked a minute ago about automatic thoughts, right? Sometimes they can be positive. Things just pop into your head, right? Things just come on in and you're like, oh, that's lovely. I was thinking about my daughter crawling this morning and I was like, oh, I miss her so much. And also I'm really grateful that I have a wonderful school to take her to so that I can work. So, but I was like, oh, she's just wants to get into everything. She like really, really got a hold of crawling and used to just kind of be like, I'm fine sitting right here. And I guess now she's realized that she's gotten older. She's like, oh no, I actually could go over there. So I'm going, so she's really cute. Anyway, sorry for my little tangent, but I miss my babies today. So, what are you thinking about? What are your thoughts? What are your automatic thoughts? What are your automatic negative thoughts, right? Recognizing any cognitive distortion, those thinking errors we talk about, right? Are you recognizing, are you saying, this is a thinking error right here. I'm trying to read someone's mind. Oh, I know that they think da, da, da. Oh, I know that they believe blah, 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 right? Do you know that? No. How do we know things? We ask people questions. We ask for help, right? So emotions, what are you feeling? Physically feeling, emotionally, right? Sometimes emotions have physical feelings. Have you ever had anxiety? I actually have had kind of panic symptoms before, and I know how I feel. I'm not going to describe them because let's not trigger people on a random Tuesday, but just saying, right? So what are the results of those thoughts? A feeling doesn't necessarily begin with I feel. It often begins with a thought. So what is the thought that leads to that, right? So again, let's pick up the book and go through and make sure we're making sure that we're using the right emotions, okay? Use the real words, use the right words as much as you can, continue to educate yourself. Again, shoot me a DM and I will have this conversation with you. If you have a specific one, you're like, I feel this way and I think it's that, and I think it's that, or again, I do not, Brene Brown couldn't pick me out of a lineup. She has never heard my name. I did take my supervision course at the University of Houston. Does not make me an alum of University of Houston because I didn't go there, but she teaches at the University of Houston. So like we lived in the same city at some point. So that's kind of cool. But no, woman does not know me. I do not get any points or money or anything. She is not a sponsor of this podcast. But the book is right there, y'all. I'm just saying. So making sure that we're using the right words. Also, it's an HBO Max special, which is really an interesting, and it's a visual medium of learning versus reading if you're interested in that. So making sure that you're recognizing what those feelings are, right? So what's the situation? What are my thoughts? What are my emotions? Then from there, talking about the behavior, right? So with cognitive restructuring, we're talking about the flow, right? So picture on a sheet of paper, right? Like the top of the page, situation, arrow pointing down, the thoughts, arrow pointing down, the emotions, arrow pointing down, the behavior. What do you do as a result of feeling that way? And I know Dr. Hardy and I talked about, like, she loves psychodynamic and she's not so much into cognitive behavioral therapy. And I think that's wonderful. She's a genius and I love her and I loved our conversation. Also, if you haven't listened to that episode, go back and do it, please. What a joy, what a treat. Anyway, so, but this is kind of me talking about that cognitive behavioral therapy that we were talking about last time. It's talking about thoughts that lead to emotions that lead to behaviors, right? And so what do you do as a result of feeling this way? Is it sitting? Is it missing something? Is it getting up and punching somebody in the face? In Will Smith's case, slapping. It's going back to the Mano episode. I just, recognizing why we do the things we do is so important. And I think sometimes we kind of, I don't want to say float through the day, but we lack a sense of intentionality sometimes. And I think when we're being intentional is when we are making better choices about our actions as a result of the emotions. So from there, so we're looking on the page, we're moving down the arrows, situation, thought, arrow down to thought, arrow down to emotion, arrow down to behavior, arrow down to a new way of thinking, right? Ask yourself, where is the proof that what I'm saying, that what I'm feeling is true? That this situation, is there another way of looking at the situation? And God bless my husband. I know he listens to my podcast also. So hi, Austin, I love you. He is a genius at this. I will come in guns blazing. I will be upset. I will be plucked about something. I will be so frustrated. And I'll be like, well, this happened and this and that. And he'll be like, oh, well, do you think maybe they meant it this way? And I'm like, frick, taking the anger out of my back sails. That's for sure. He sure knows how to do that, because he'll be like, just so quickly. His brain just works in a different way than mine. And he'll be like, I mean, it's possible that they meant it this way. And then it's like, well, yes. And now I'm not allowed to be mad at it anymore because I don't know. And of course, the best thing to do is just to ask somebody directly. Right. But when you're at that stage where my guns are blazing, I'm not going to come back to somebody and I want to make sure that I get myself in a space where I can be utilizing that wise mind a little more. So I love that though. Austin will just be like, oh, maybe they meant it this way. Dang it. Now I can't be mad anymore. Okay. No, I'm kidding. It's a good thing to not, I want to be positive and optimistic as often as possible. So truthfully optimistic, not toxic positivity, obviously. So another way of looking at the situation. What would I say to a good friend in the same situation? I know that's such a cliche and so cheesy, but it's so true. Would you literally say the things that you just said to yourself to a friend? Absolutely no way. There's absolutely no way. If it's something sassy and negative, there's absolutely no way. You would not do it. The way that we talk to ourselves is deplorable. It is despicable. And I mean, maybe not, maybe you're the best self-talk in the world. So if you're the one person out there who's doing that and crushing it, fair enough. But I'm talking about the people who are maybe perhaps looking to make some changes, right? So would you say that to a good friend if they were in the same situation? Would you look at it that way? Any other ways that you're having cognitive distortions to the situation? We want to make sure that we're thinking of a new way of looking at things, a new way of thinking, right? So, and then the last thing, new way then of feeling. As a result of that, are any of your negative feelings any less intense as a result of kind of going through? And I honestly too, taking anger out of your back, say, I was like, taking the time to write this stuff down is a good exercise. And I'm not saying calming down, like you need to calm down because you're not allowed to feel this way, but I'm saying like, it's a good way for me to calm down. If I actually sit through and use my wise mind of like, I have every right to feel emotional. I have every right to be mad right now. I am not telling myself to calm down. And also I would like to feel a different way about this. So how can I balance myself a little bit more while still owning and feeling empowered to be enraged or whatever my emotion is? How can I look at it in a different way? So all of these things are true. We talked about this again, sitting with the tension of paradox, right? Like, yes, and two things can be true. I am allowed to be furious, and also there can be a different way for me to look at this. So while I'm furious, let me find a way for me to look in a different way and get to a different space. So going through this activity, this exercise can be a really good way of doing that. And then, as I encourage everybody to be open and communicative with their loved ones, colleagues, whoever the issue is with, being able to come from a space of calmness and wise mind when you do approach the conversation instead of just trying to mind read or figure out what they're saying. So after you've gone through this, you got your flow chart, right? You started up at the top of the situation, you've gone all the way through with your little arrows going down. Is there anything that you feel less intense about after this new way of thinking? How do you feel now? What do you think, having recognized that I was maybe a little too far on the emotion side, right? So, okay, let me add in a little logic over here. Perhaps they were thinking of a different way. Maybe somebody didn't mean it that way. Maybe I misinterpreted the situation, right? So that is your very quick overview of the wise mind. I appreciate those of you who reached out and you're like, you talked to Mano McDuffie about that, and I'd like to hear a little more, please, and thank you about it. I'm always happy to, again, shoot me notes, topics that you want me to talk about. I don't know everything about everything. Clearly, I reference other professionals. I am currently reading and watching the HBO special, so Brene is going to be somebody who comes up a lot, but I promise to also look for other people as well. And then also obviously share with you my own individual thoughts in my time in practice. So that is it for today. I appreciate you all so much. I hope everyone is just living their best life. I'm excited that the weather is changing and getting warmer. I look forward to pool weather. That also means a lot more allergies. So, it's like, what are you going to do? Anyway, so hope everyone has a lovely one. Like Ted said, Walt said, be curious, not judgmental. Make it a good one, y'all.